Hey everyone, Gene here. Welcome back to the Evil Within. This is an Akumu, no upgrade, no locker, no flashbolt, no freeze bolt playthrough on the PS4, and we're on chapter 8. So this chapter starts right away. We're just going to get right into it. As you can see, there's enemies right in this very first room. So I'm going to weave in and out of them to kite them back into this narrow space. And I'm going to hit them all with one explosive bolt to weaken all of them, and then blast them all with the shotgun with just one shell, and then finish them off with some safety stomps here. I think they were all dead, but I stomped them anyway because you can do it for free. So that's a really effective way to take care of those three. And you could just run past them, but there's one at the base of this doorway coming up here, and he kind of gets in the way. And then you have one of those long cranks you have to turn, those long animations. So running past these guys isn't really viable unless you do like a series of shock bolts or things like that, which obviously when they're not upgraded is not very viable. So that enemy is on the ground already, so you can just stomp him. And then right here, I'm trying to hit this enemy with a grenade, and as you can see, it just doesn't work. So, but I'm not going for a super optimal playthrough here, so when I mess up or do stupid things like that, you guys can see it, because it's going to happen. So I don't mind if some of what I do looks dumb, because there's going to be more of this in this playthrough where I mess things up. It is what it is. So these enemies are really good when they're isolated to use the harpoon bolt, just because it does damage, it stuns them. And when you're using them against the haunted, it's a little bit more situational. So it's a good all-around weapon for the alter egos if you have harpoon bolts. And right there, it kind of took a lot of handgun ammo to kill that one because, again, it's at base damage. It only does, I think, 30... I could be wrong. It's 30 or 36 damage it does at base level, which is not very much. So it took 6 shots or so to kill him. But that's okay, because I don't need the handgun very much for the rest of this chapter. Actually, so that was 6 enemies, one of which was already on the ground, so I got to kill him for free, essentially. There's really no enemies past this point in the level. There's a new enemy type that appears just in one room, and I don't even know if I'd really call them enemies. They're more like some kind of weird stage hazard that moves. I don't know. They're not really an enemy. Other than that, this chapter's basically over in terms of combat. I find it really weird that chapter 6 is so long, and then this chapter is so short. Like, chapter 6 has about 100 times the number of enemies this level has. It also has 2 boss fights when this doesn't have any. So it's really weird contrast. I think this is the kind of stage that more people were expecting this game to have. It's more atmospheric, and there's not as much combat. There's a puzzle later on. There's also this weird enemy type coming in this room that I think a lot of people would find creepy. It's also kind of an enemy type. It reminds me of something in Dead Space or something. I don't know. But this level is kind of a nice break between the last couple chapters and then the next couple, because chapter 6, like I mentioned so many times, is so intense. And then chapters 9 and 10 are also both, maybe not chapter 9, but chapters 10 and 11 are both very difficult as well. So it's nice to have this little break here, I think. So right here, when you start to turn that crank, these weird enemies are going to fall out of the ceiling. And if you just shoot a flashbolt at these guys, they'll all just die. They'll all just like blow up into a mist of blood. But I'm not using flashbolts, so I'm playing it super safe here because they can just like jump at you from all kinds of various distances, and it doesn't really have a good tell. So I'm even using an explosive bolt on them because I was doing this part and they were literally jumping out of nowhere from where I could tell. I couldn't even see them. So I wanted to just use some big weapons to get the majority of them out of the way, and then I just kicked the last few. They're really annoying if you don't use a flashbolt. And that's it. There's a couple more coming up, but that's it. There's no more of these in the whole game. I'm going to use this time to talk about something that's just like an opinion about games in general. So one thing I always really value in games is enemy variety. I don't like fighting the same enemies all the time, but then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, wow, a lot of my favorite games don't follow that rule. A lot of my favorite games have very repetitive enemy structures and enemy compositions. Like this game, you fight Haunted as 90% of the enemies, but the Haunted they're so varied, like in and of themselves. They have so many animations and they're so unpredictable, and there's so many aspects to how they work with your weapons and things like that. It's really a classic case of just quality over quantity. And I was thinking too, like, obviously, you think this game and you think Resident Evil 4, that game's the same way. You fight the Ganados for 90, probably even more, 95% of the enemies in that game are Ganados, but the game is built around that so well. It's not an issue in my opinion, because again, quality over quantity. I've also been working on doing a special run of Metal Gear Solid 3, and that game really is the perfect example of that. You fight, or you encounter guards in that game, and aside from a couple instances, that is all in that game. It's just those guards. But I mean, there's how many different ways you can interact with those guards. It's like endless. It's endless, the number of things you can do and the number of reactions they have to you and the ways you can change their AI and all these crazy things. It doesn't even matter that they're essentially the only enemy in the game when they're so dynamic that they take the place of so many different ideas that to me it doesn't even matter. But yeah, I'm just a big fan of quality over quantity in general. Like, this game doesn't have a whole lot of guns, but I mean, I could talk all day about these weapons, even though there's only a few of them. And something like Vanquish, I mean, that's a short game that has, I mean, it's just shooting from beginning to end. And I could talk about that game all day as well. So, again, games need, in my opinion, need to just stop being so full of unneeded crap. It's not necessary to just fill your game with filler. And that's one thing that's just really put me off from so many modern games. Like, they de-emphasize actual strong gameplay mechanics to favor just filler and busy work and that quantity over quality mindset, and I can't get into it, especially when now that I have less time to play games and games now focus more on giving you more things to do and more things to check off of a list. It's just obnoxious. So yeah, I had to fill this time with me ranting because nothing happened in the last 2/3 of this level. So very strange chapter. Right here, this is the Amalgam. This is a boss that's going to come up in Chapter 10 that you actually have to fight. And it is a very hard fight, but it's very awesome. Really intimidating boss. I love the design. This game in general, I think, just has cool monster designs. Some people say it's a little generic, but yeah, that's alright. Next is Chapter 9, which is going to be kind of an homage to Resident Evil. It's one of my favorite chapters in the game. If you like the video and you want to see more like it, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.